Hello, my name is Roger Platt. I'm the president of the U.S. Green Building Council. I'm here at the World Green Building Council's Congress, annual Congress in Hong Kong, and talking with leaders in the green building movement. I have the pleasure of talking now with Terri Wills, the president of the World Green Building Council. And Terri, I'd like to start by just asking you to tell us a little bit about your own background, what brought you to the green building movement, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's on the minds of the World Green Building Council members.
Great, absolutely. Thanks, Roger. My background is actually in politics and then media. I'm not an engineer. I'm not as technical as a lot of our great green building councils, but I think my interest is really in how we can affect significant change around the world, working with countries and cities, but also demonstrating leadership from the private sector. I then worked for a long time in media, and that's a great interest of mine as well, where I think we really need to tell our story and tell a positive story about how green building can be a solution to tackle climate change, but also a solution that can bring greater benefits also to society and to economy today. So those are my areas of interest as we're advancing the COP21 in Paris.
Very good. So as we do begin our journey on the road to the COP, and you're listening closely to the stories, the aspirations, the hopes, the priorities of green building leaders around the world. Can you give us a little bit of a flavor of what they're telling you as you go to Paris in December?
Absolutely. I think what we're really hearing from green building councils around the world is that, we need to focus on a few key areas. One of those is on new building and trying to get new building as close to net zero carbon as we can. The numbers really show us that we need to get there in order to achieve a 2-degree scenario of global warming. And I know a number of countries, particularly in emerging economies, are seeing significant growth in building, that there's a significant increase in the square footage of building that will be constructed in the next 20, 30 years. And it is absolutely essential that those new buildings are as close to net zero carbon as possible. But in some countries, that is harder than others. So we really need to look to solutions, to leadership from the private sector, to innovate in solutions. The other area is really around renovation. Certain parts of the world, like Europe and London, where I'm based, a significant percentage of the buildings that will exist in 2050 exist today. And some of those buildings have been around 50, 100 years and are badly in need of renovation and retrofitting to become more energy efficient. But that can be quite challenging. What are the business models for that? Do you do a gradual retrofit? Do you do it all at once? So we have a number of green building councils in Europe that are coming together under the Build Upon initiative that are working with their countries to develop renovation strategies. And I think the green building councils around the world are looking forward to learning from these GBCs and their countries around renovation. And finally, the third area that is really exciting to us is also sustainable communities and cities. And I think the green buildings aren't just about standalone buildings, but also how those buildings are situated. Are they close to transportation? Are they focused around green space? And so the design of building and cities together is very important for the future of green building as well.
Well, let me ask you to step back, and for those who may be watching who really are just scratching their heads and asking why buildings would be an important part of any climate change discussion, whether you can just put in big picture terms what it is that makes buildings part of the problem and part of the solution.
Absolutely. So right now when we look at greenhouse gas emissions globally, buildings comprise about 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. So this is significant. This is, they draw on energy, which then contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions. So that means that while they're part of the problem, they can also be part of the solution. So we know that if we were to continue building as business as usual, meaning the way that we're building today. The emissions will continue to rise. So as we see more and more buildings being constructed around the world in the way that we're building today, we could go up to a scenario of 6 degrees of global warming, which would be catastrophic. But the flip side of that is that we know that we can reduce emissions and get ourselves to a 2-degree scenario, which is much more manageable. And in order to do that, from now until 2050, we need to reduce 84 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions. Now, basically that equates to eliminating 22,000 coal plants, which is significant. We know we can achieve it through the net zero new building and through renovation, but that really gives you a picture of why buildings are part of the problem right now, but also why green building can be part of the solution.
Okay, well, let me conclude by returning again to the fact that we're on this road to Paris, and in Paris, you will be speaking at the first ever Buildings Day, and have been very involved working with the UN, making sure that has real impact. What is it that the World Green Building Council is going to identify as its commitment for the green building leaders that are part of the World Green Building Council? What are the areas which you'll be discussing in Paris?
So what we are going to take to Paris to Buildings Day is our collective commitment, which is essentially putting forward that we as a movement are going to commit to reducing those 84 gigatons of CO2 that need to be reduced by 2050. And in order to do that, we are going to enable a market transformation that will ultimately achieve 2 main goals by 2050, which is net zero new building and also deep renovation, deep energy efficiency within renovation. So for us, that is our collective commitment, but we're also inviting green building councils to make their own commitments within their own countries. So taking that a step further and getting much more specific. That may include aspects like how many square feet of green building they will certify, how they will support advancing financing of green building, also training. Many green building councils are making commitments on how many green workers they will train in green building techniques, and then also supporting their governments. Many GBCs are committing to supporting their government in helping develop policies and strategies to implement green building at scale. So we on Buildings Day, together with France and UNEP and other partners, will be presenting these commitments to really demonstrate to the countries that will be signing the Paris Treaty that we are here as a movement to support their goals and their intended nationally determined contributions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.